Hi folks, welcome back to the shop. Quick video today is going to be about CAD for CNC, as per the thumbnail. I said that very quickly at the start because according to all the gurus, you're supposed to get that out of the way at the start so people know what the video is about, despite what's written on the thumbnail. Anyway, what I'm going to talk about is essentially if you're new to CAD and just starting out drawing for your own CNC, or indeed if you're preparing some CAD for some. It's nothing really complicated, there's just a few basic errors that we all fall into when we first start out, and if I can help you eliminate those, it will, smooth your path into the CNC world. And so without further ado, let's get right into the video. So now I'm over at the computer. I'm just using the 2D CAD software for this demonstration. The software doesn't matter too much. The terminology may differ slightly in whichever you use, but at the end of the day, they all have pretty similar functionality. Now, one of the biggest tips I can give you is to make sure that your preferences, the basics, are set up right from the get-go. Easy mistake to make is you just leave it to whatever the default is of you set up the package, and before you know it, your files are in different dimensions. So from the get-go, if you set up the parameters, say whichever measurements, so that every time you open the package, it goes to that default. And trust me, this can help later on if you download packages or someone sends you something they want cut and they've used a different setting. In theory, your package should pop up with some kind of warning to say there is some kind of difference there. Now then, we're looking at the CAD space itself, and this is infinite. This is like the universe. It just goes on and on. And it's worse if you're using a 3D CAD package, because then you've got different planes you can use too, which just adds further complication. In 2D world, it's just one flat level plane. If you're in 3D world, you want to get a plan view looking down, which I believe would be the XY plane when doing your drawings. And that brings us on to where to do your drawings within that plane once you start. It's tempting to just lay them down anywhere, and I see quite a lot of videos online where people are just drawing randomly in this infinite space. They might be near or close to the center, but they're still off somewhere. Every CAD package has a 0 point. It's normally some kind of crosshair on the center of the screen. That's where you should start all your drawings from, and you should keep it within that element and go out from there. Now within that though, every CNC operator or every CNC machine has a different preference on how they use their machine. Some people like to use the center of the part and everything's measured from there. Others, like myself, I prefer the bottom left hand corner. I always machine from that place, so my parts always start with the 0, 0 being the bottom left hand corner. And in my system we use something called layer lists, so I create different layers for different elements I may need in a drawing. And these can be enabled or disabled as I need to make them visible or invisible on the screen, and that visibility goes across to the CAM software. I can enable or disable the layers as needed. And typically within mine I would have guides or construction lines in one layer. I may have text and dimensions in another. Again, these are things that wouldn't necessarily appear on the parts themselves, but I may need for reference at some point in the future. All this helps keep your drawings in order and helps you find different elements when you need them quickly. Okay, now let's talk about some drawings themselves. Okay, so many people use polylines or splines for creating drawings, and indeed if you download drawings from the internet, or perhaps convert an image, an SVG or something like that, convert it into a drawing for CAD or for CAM, then it usually consists of polylines or splines. Basically this is the thousands of lines, little lines joined up by thousands of little nodes, and they can be an absolute pain, but I'm going to cover more of that in a moment. For the moment I want to explain what I say is a better system if you're creating your own drawings, when and where you can use it. Those polyline drawings consist of hundreds if not thousands of small little lines joined up with nodes to make the shape you need. Fantastic if you're doing a drawing or indeed an engraving of, say, a signature or some artwork. They work perfectly in those instances, but they can also hide a lot of errors and issues which you can also add in whilst editing them, but I'll cover that more in a moment later on in the video. Suffice to say that one of the main issues I find is, for example, when you get a polyline drawing and it's of a part that is fairly geometric, that requires screws, for example, placed in certain positions, and they have a certain dimension. Invariably with a polyline, it's just a random squiggle that's vaguely circular shape, and it has no center marking. Now clearly you need a center mark to both define its diameter or radius, but also for its location within the part, wherever it's going to be. So yeah, unless you're doing lots of drawings or squiggly lines sort of stuff, most of the time you're going to be making parts that require fixed shapes. And for this I always say that you should be using geometric shapes as much as possible. And most CAD packages have within them a list of different fixed shapes that you can use. If you need a square, pick a square. If you need a circle, pick a circle. If you need a polygon, choose a polygon. Same goes if you need to edit a part to add, for example, a chamfer or a fillet to a corner. Don't use lines, don't use circles and edit it out. Look for the chamfer tool or the fillet tool and use the parameters within that to create the object. Could I ask a big favour, if you're really enjoying this content and finding any of it useful, if you really could hit the like and subscribe button. It does help my channel out, and it does help more people to get to see it, because YouTube then actively encourage it around more. Thank you very much. Now moving on to creating objects with straight lines. Straight lines are great. Again, they can be defined, but to use them to create objects can cause other issues. I have an example on the screen here. It's a rectangle. It looks very much like a rectangle, but when you click on the perimeter, it's made up of individual lines. In order to get this to work within CAM software, I would need to tell my software to define it or enclose it, and so I would make a full segment from a polyline with a click of a button. Bit of a pain. I could have done it just as fast using a rectangle tool. But worse, it now hides an anomaly. Well, within that rectangle there is an extra line appears down here. You can't see it till you click on it, but that is enough to throw out the CAM software. Again, if this was maybe a construction line, I should have put it on the guides layer, my construction layer, where I could disable it. As it is, it's just a random line that appears from nowhere. But it is enough to cause issues down the road. And clearly, if this had been a part with lots of elements to it, it would have been very difficult to track down on its own. Okay, now let's get back to the polylines themselves. I created this drawing earlier on. No Picasso, it's just a squiggly line I did that was fully enclosed to give some idea of what a polyline might look like. And for drawings in complex shapes such as this is exactly what you get, a polyline. Zoom in, sure enough, there is these hundreds of lines and hundreds of nodes. And whereas if you've created this yourself, it might be perfect, chances are it's been downloaded or sent to you and needs some kind of editing or changes therein. And for example, a bit you want to use may not fit in an internal curve, so you need to change the shape of that curve to make it work with your tooling. And all the way through this little problems can appear and grow into this particular polylines. And I've had some typical issues within this one itself. The first one being it appears on the screen to be fully enclosed. If I've clicked on it as I have, you can see all the nodes come up and all lines, which looks like a full circumference of the object. However, if I were to zoom in and zoom in again, as you can see, we've got a little break here, and that break is enough to cause problems. So we need to fully close that before we could go any further. Now then, within the part I've also hidden another couple of elements to show what else can also happen as you're creating these things and editing them out. And there's something called zero length entities. These could be just a simple dot on the screen that appears randomly, but that could be enough to throw out the software using the CAM. Now when that dot is on the part itself or close to the part, it gets even harder to see. I've had to use arrows to show where I've drawn them on here to help me find them. If I was hunting for this manually, it could take me some time. That little pimple will cause all sorts of problems to the CAD software. It's a bit like having an unknown item on the self-checkout. Absolute pain. And these normally appear after you've done some kind of editing and you've sorted a curve out or some kind of shape out, and it's left a little remnant. That little remnant just sits there waiting to cause you grief. Now the other type is something we call a dangly end. Dangly ends usually means it's where you've had an intersection, the lines that meet, and you've shortened one or changed one, and there's a little bit, just a tiny amount, that just sticks out. It could be micromillimeters long, literally one dot away from the end of a line, but that dangly end can be a real pain. Now in this example, and the second one here, I've drawn it as a line over the top of the original line with a little bit sticking out, but it gives you the similar sort of idea. And believe me, these are extremes that I've drawn here to show you. In reality, these things could be microscopic in trying to find and fix. Trust me, I've been there. So there we go, a quick handful of tips on using CAD very quickly for CNC. And now back to John pretending to be in the shop, but actually standing exactly where I am for the outro. So there you go, a few tips on using CAD for CNC. I hope some of you have found this useful. To be honest with you, these are mistakes that I've made throughout the years. I still make them today. I did some CAD earlier on and added an extra line in without realising it was there. But hopefully some of you found this useful and it helps you smooth out your CAD in the future. Thank you for watching. Take care.